My manager, Everett, stood in front of me, his face contorted with rage, spittle flying from his mouth as he continued his verbal assault. The string lights blurred through my tears as 50 colleagues fell silent around us, watching this public execution of my dignity. My crime? Suggesting improvements to our failing marketing campaign, improvements he'd rejected for months. I stood perfectly still, champagne flute steady in my hand while he continued his tirade about my incompetence. 3 years of this treatment flashed through my mind, my ideas dismissed, then mysteriously reappearing as his, my overtime unacknowledged, my achievements attributed to everyone but me. His wife Naomi touched his arm, clearly embarrassed. Honey, maybe. No, I interrupted softly. That's not what the board told me when they made me your new boss yesterday. He dropped his glass. Champagne splashed across his expensive shoes as whispers erupted around us. Naomi gasped, eyes widening in recognition. She'd been at the same yoga studio last week when I'd received the call confirming my promotion, a detail I hadn't connected until this moment. Everett's face drained of color as he stared at me. This is ridiculous, he sputtered, looking around for support. There must be a mistake. The mistake, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart, was thinking nobody would notice. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever had that moment when everything inside you screams to run away, to hide from confrontation, but instead, you find yourself standing your ground? If you've ever faced someone who tried to diminish you, this story might resonate with you. Stay with me until the end, because what unfolded changed not just my career but my entire understanding of power. My name is Andy Mercer. I'm 32, analytical to a fault, and until recently, I was known as the quiet problem solver in our marketing department, the one who worked weekends to rescue failing campaigns but somehow never appeared in the success stories. I was raised by a single mom who taught me that hard work eventually pays off. For 3 years at Thompson Media Consultancy, I kept believing that. I joined the company with a master's degree and boundless enthusiasm. Everett became my direct supervisor 6 months later. He was charismatic, confident, the kind of person who dominated rooms without trying. His reputation as a marketing genius preceded him. The first time he took credit for my work, I told myself it was a misunderstanding. The second time, I wondered if I'd somehow failed to communicate my contributions clearly. By the third time, I recognized the pattern but convinced myself that speaking up would only label me as difficult. I watched as Everett systematically harvested ideas from every woman on our team. Lucia's client engagement strategy became Everett's revolutionary approach. Tessa's digital innovation framework appeared in his presentation to the executive team with his name on every slide. It's just how things work, whispered Tessa when I questioned it. You get used to it or you leave. But I couldn't accept that. Not when our team was genuinely brilliant. Not when I saw the resignation in the eyes of women who'd once been passionate about their work. 6 months before that holiday party, I started documenting everything. Not in a vindictive way, initially. It was just to validate my own sanity. I created a spreadsheet tracking project outcomes, noting which ideas came from which team members, and how credit was ultimately assigned. The data told a startling story. Projects conceptualized primarily by women outperformed others by 34%, despite receiving fewer resources and less executive support. The pattern was unmistakable. I might have kept this information to myself indefinitely if not for Vivienne Torres, a board member who visited our floor for a routine department tour. She stopped by my desk, noticed the color-coded efficiency charts on my screen, and asked what I was working on. Just some personal analysis, I replied automatically. She tilted her head. That doesn't look like personal analysis. That looks like business intelligence we should be reviewing at the board level. Something in her tone gave me courage. Would you have time for coffee sometime? There's something I think the board should know. 2 days later, in a quiet corner of a cafe 3 blocks from the office, I showed Vivienne my complete analysis. Her expression remained neutral until I finished speaking. The board has been concerned about our female employee retention rates, she finally said. Now I understand why we're losing so much talent. She closed my laptop gently. Keep documenting. Keep excelling. And don't tell anyone we've had this conversation. For months, nothing seemed to change. I continued working, continued documenting, continued watching Everett take credit for others' brilliance. Then came the email inviting me to a confidential meeting with the board. I arrived 15 minutes early, heart pounding. The boardroom felt cavernous with just me sitting there, waiting. When the door opened, I expected Vivienne. Instead, the entire board filed in. "Ms. Mercer," began the chairperson, "we've been reviewing your analysis alongside our company performance metrics. We've come to a decision about the future of the marketing department." My stomach tightened. Had I overstepped? Was I about to be terminated for collecting this data? "We'd like to offer you the position of marketing director, effective immediately." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Everett will report to you starting tomorrow. We've already drafted the announcement." "But he has 10 years more experience than I do." The chairperson leaned forward. "Experience isn't just measured in years, Miss Mercer. It's measured in results. Your hidden contributions have kept this department afloat while being attributed to others. Imagine what you could accomplish when you're actually acknowledged as the leader." I hadn't told anyone about the promotion. I wanted to process it myself first, to prepare for the inevitable backlash. I certainly hadn't planned to announce it at the holiday party in front of everyone, but Everett's public humiliation of me forced my hand. Now, standing amid the shocked silence following my revelation, I realized the real challenge was just beginning. Everett's expression had morphed from shock to something darker, more calculated. "We should discuss this privately," he said through clenched teeth, grabbing my elbow. I gently removed his hand. "We can meet in my new office tomorrow morning at 9, I said, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. "I'll be reviewing the department structure." As I walked away, conversations erupted behind me. I could feel Everett's eyes burning into my back, but I didn't turn around. Instead, I found Lucia and Tessa huddled near the dessert table, watching me with wide eyes. "Is it true?" Lucia whispered. I nodded. "He'll make your life hell," Tessa warned. "Probably," I agreed, "but he'll have to do it as my subordinate." For the first time in years, I slept deeply that night, waking refreshed despite the challenges I knew awaited me. I arrived at the office an hour early to find my belongings already moved to the director's office, a glass-walled space 3 times larger than my former cubicle. On the desk sat a single yellow sticky note: "Enjoy it while it lasts." I was reviewing department files when Everett appeared in my doorway precisely at 9, wearing a smile that suggested our confrontation had never happened. "Andy, congratulations on the promotion. I think there's been some confusion about reporting structure, but I'm sure we can sort that out." I gestured to the chair across from me. "No confusion, Everett. The board was quite clear." His smile tightened. "Look, I've been running this department for 7 years. The clients know me. The team respects me. This arrangement won't work." "It already is working," I replied, sliding a folder across the desk. "These are the new department guidelines. The board approved them yesterday." He flipped through the pages, his face darkening. "A complete restructuring, team rotation, mandatory documentation, of idea origination." He threw the folder down. "This is micromanagement. This is transparency." I finished for him. "Every idea will be attributed to its creator. Every team member will receive credit for their contributions." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You think you've won something here? I built relationships with every client we have. One word from me, and they'll walk." I'd anticipated this. The board has already informed our top 10 clients about the leadership change. They've expressed enthusiasm about the new direction. "This is about yesterday, isn't it?" His voice rose again. "You couldn't take a little constructive criticism, so you went crying to the board with some sob story. This is about 3 years of systematic appropriation of others' work. This is about creating an environment where innovation is rewarded regardless of who generates it." Everett stood abruptly. "You've made an enemy today, Andy, and I'm not someone you want as an enemy." As he stormed out, I noticed Lucia standing just outside the glass wall, having witnessed the entire exchange. She gave me a small, hopeful smile. That smile was worth whatever battle was coming. The following weeks brought exactly the challenges I'd expected. Everett accidentally excluded me from critical client communications. Meeting invitations mysteriously disappeared from my calendar. Documents I needed for presentations went missing until just minutes before I was scheduled to speak. But I'd prepared for this. I'd created redundant communication channels, set up automatic backups, and most importantly, I'd started meeting individually with team members, particularly those who'd been silenced before. Your content strategy for the Harrington account is brilliant, I told Tessa during one such meeting. I'd like you to present it directly to the client next week. Her eyes widened. Me? But Everett always handles the Harrington presentations. Not anymore, I said. It's your idea. You should present it. One by one, I gave team members ownership of their ideas. The results were immediate and stunning. People who had been going through the motions suddenly came alive with creativity. Projects improved dramatically when their true architects were allowed to guide them. Everett's desperate attempts to undermine me grew more obvious as his influence waned. Whispers about how I'd slept my way to the top began circulating, whispers that mysteriously originated near Everett's new workspace. I never confronted these rumors directly. Instead, I let my work speak for itself. I implemented a weekly innovation showcase where team members presented their current projects and received public recognition. Notably absent from these showcases was any original contribution from Everett. When his turn came to present, he'd offer vague strategy platitudes or recycle concepts from industry publications, sometimes word for word. The defining moment came 3 months after my promotion. Our biggest client, Harrington Industries, was considering expanding their contract to include our international division, a deal worth millions. I assigned the proposal development to a diverse team that included Lucia, Tessa, and 3 other previously overlooked employees. The night before the presentation, I left their completed presentation materials in a labeled folder on my desk, planning to review them one final time in the morning. When I arrived at 7 a.m., the folder was gone. The building security logs showed only one other person had entered our floor since the cleaning crew left at midnight, Everett, who had badged in at 5:43 a.m. and out again at 6:12 a.m. At 8:30, I received an email from him. Andy, I took the initiative to handle the Harrington presentation myself today. As the person with the longest client relationship, it makes sense for me to lead this. I'll let you know how it goes. End. I checked the conference room booking system. He'd moved the meeting to an off-site location, a restaurant 15 minutes away. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I had minutes to act. I grabbed my phone and called Vivienne Torres. Andy, is everything all right? Her voice was calm, professional. Everett stole the Harrington presentation and moved the meeting off-site. I need help. Her response was immediate. Text me the address. I'll handle it. I had no idea what "I'll handle it" meant, but I trusted her. I sent the restaurant address, then gathered every backup copy of the presentation materials I could find. This was exactly why I'd implemented our new triple backup system. When I arrived at the restaurant, breathless and clutching my materials, I froze at the entrance. Through the window, I could see Everett already seated with the Harrington team, 5 executives in business attire listening intently as he gestured emphatically. Before I could push through the door, a sleek black car pulled up, and Vivienne stepped out, followed by 2 other board members and, most surprisingly, Eleanor Harrington herself, the founder and CEO of Harrington Industries. Perfect timing, Vivienne said, straightening her blazer. Eleanor and I were having breakfast when your text came through. She was quite interested to hear about our new transparency initiative. Eleanor Harrington, a commanding woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that miss nothing, nodded briefly. Vivienne tells me you've been revolutionizing how credit is assigned for creative work. As someone who spent decades watching men take credit for my innovations, I'm intrigued. Together, we walked into the restaurant. The look on Everett's face when he saw our group was a masterpiece of dawning horror. Everett, Eleanor said warmly, I didn't realize you'd be presenting today. The schedule my office received listed Andy Mercer and her team. Everett recovered quickly, flashing his practiced charm. Last-minute change, Eleanor. Given my history with Harrington, I thought it best I handle this personally. How thoughtful, Eleanor replied. her smile never reaching her eyes. But since Andy is here with the board members, why don't we let her proceed as planned? Actually, I interjected. The presentation was developed by a team that isn't here. Lucia, Tessa, and 3 other colleagues created this proposal. I'm just delivering their work. Eleanor's eyebrows rose with interest. Giving credit to the actual creators? How novel. She shot a pointed look at Everett. I'd very much like to hear what your team has developed, Andy. As I set up the presentation, Everett leaned close to whisper, "This changes nothing. You're still out of your depth." I proceeded to present the team's international marketing strategy, carefully attributing each section to its creator. When I finished, Eleanor and her executives were nodding appreciatively. "This is precisely the innovative thinking we've been looking for," Eleanor said. "Particularly the Asia-Pacific approach Lucia developed. Is there any reason we can't meet these team members directly?" "They're available now," I said, pulling out my phone. "I can have them join us via video call in 5 minutes." Eleanor smiled. "Perfect." What followed was a 45-minute discussion where my team members, appearing on my tablet screen propped at the center of the table, directly answered questions about their components of the strategy. Their expertise shone through, their passion undeniable. Everett sat silent, growing increasingly rigid, as it became clear he couldn't answer the technical questions the Harrington team posed. He didn't understand the strategy well enough to claim it as his own. When the meeting concluded, Eleanor walked me to the door. "Vivienne mentioned your analysis of performance metrics correlated with idea attribution. I'd like to see that data sometime." "I'd be happy to share it," I replied. "Good. And Andy?" She lowered her voice. "I recognize what you're doing here. 20 years ago, I wish someone had done the same for me." She handed me her business card with a personal number written on the back. "Call me directly if you need anything." In the weeks that followed, Everett's position became increasingly precarious. The Harrington contract was finalized, our largest deal ever, with explicit language requiring the original strategy creators to remain involved throughout implementation. Other clients began requesting similar transparency. Our new attribution system wasn't just an internal policy anymore. It was becoming our market differentiator. Everett's attempts to undermine me grew desperate. He began copying me on emails at 3 a.m., then scheduling 7 a.m. meetings to discuss them. He questioned every decision in public forums, trying to make me appear indecisive. He planted seeds of doubt with longtime clients, suggesting the company was becoming too focused on feelings instead of results. None of it worked. The department's performance metrics were undeniable. Projects moved faster. Client satisfaction scores rose. Employee retention improved dramatically. Meanwhile, Everett's individual contributions remained non-existent. Under our new system, he couldn't generate any measurable value. In 3 months, he hadn't originated a single implemented idea. I knew he was searching for other jobs. Our IT monitoring system flagged his resume uploads from company devices, but his lack of demonstrable personal achievements made finding comparable positions difficult. I could have fired him. The board would have supported that decision. But termination would have allowed him to play the victim, to create a narrative where I was the villain who'd pushed out a longtime leader over a personal grudge. No, I needed something more definitive, more transparent. The opportunity came during our quarterly department review. We had introduced a new evaluation system where team members assessed each other's contributions anonymously. The aggregated scores created a clear picture of who was driving value and who wasn't. Everett's scores were abysmal. Not because people disliked him. Our system specifically separated personal popularity from professional contribution, but because he genuinely added nothing of substance to any project. After reviewing the results with the board, we implemented a department restructuring. Everyone received new role definitions aligned with their demonstrated strengths. Every person except Everett, who was placed in a newly created position, documentation compliance specialist. His job? Ensuring all work was properly attributed to its original creators. Monitoring for instances where credit was misappropriated. Maintaining the integrity of our creative ownership system. The very system designed to prevent what he had done for years. The irony was exquisite. To succeed in this role, he would have to actively identify and prevent the behavior that had built his entire career. And every success in his new position would further validate the system that had exposed his inadequacy. I called him into my office to discuss the transition. "This is constructive dismissal," he said immediately. "You're trying to force me to quit." "Not at all," I replied. "This is a critical role in our new structure. The board specifically requested someone with your attention to detail. You're demoting me to a glorified clerk. I'm reassigning you to a position aligned with your demonstrated capabilities." I smiled. "You'll maintain your salary and title as associate director. Your office remains the same. This is about revenge, isn't it? For all those times I pushed you to be better?" I leaned forward. "This is about transparency, Everett. Something you've never valued. I could sue for harassment." "You could," I agreed. "But discovery works both ways. All those emails would become public record. All those meeting recordings. All those documented instances where you took credit for others' work. Is that the legacy you want?" He had no answer. The following morning, his office was empty. Not cleared out, just unoccupied. I assumed he'd taken a personal day to consider his options. But he appeared just before lunch, carrying a box of personal items, his expression unreadable. "Moving offices?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Moving on," he replied. "I've accepted a position with another company." I felt a momentary pang of disappointment. Had he escaped the consequences so easily? That was quick. "Which company?" A flash of discomfort crossed his face. "It's more of a lateral move, a chance to build something new." 2 weeks later, I discovered where he'd landed. A former colleague sent me a social media screenshot. Everett beaming alongside a small group in a cramped office space, announcing his new role as marketing strategist at a startup I'd never heard of. The company had 3 employees, including him. I felt no satisfaction seeing his reduced circumstances. That wasn't the point of what I'd done. The real victory came 3 months later, during our semi-annual employee engagement survey. Participation, 100%. Satisfaction, up 42%. Trust in leadership, up 57%. Would recommend as a workplace, up 61%. And most tellingly, in the comments section, one anonymous response stood out. "For the first time in my career, I feel safe bringing my ideas forward. I no longer fear my contributions will be stolen. I no longer have to choose between advancing my career and maintaining my integrity." That was the real revenge, not destroying Everett, but creating an environment where people like him couldn't thrive, where the behaviors he represented became relics of an outdated workplace culture. 6 months after Everett's departure, Eleanor Harrington invited me to speak at a women's leadership conference. My topic? Transparency as transformation, how attribution drives innovation. As I prepared my presentation, I received an unexpected email from Naomi, Everett's wife, or rather, his ex-wife. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." The message was brief. "Andy, I don't know if you remember me from that holiday party. I'm writing to thank you. What you did at your company inspired me to look more closely at my own marriage." I realized I'd been allowing Everett to take credit for my contributions for years, not just professionally, but personally. The day after he started his new job, I filed for divorce. I've since launched my own interior design firm. For the first time in 15 years, my name stands alone on my work. I thought you should know the ripple effects of your courage, Naomi. I sat back, reading her words again. My actions hadn't just changed our workplace. They'd created waves I never anticipated. The night of the leadership conference, I stood before a room of 500 women and a few men to share what we'd built. Not just a new department structure, but a new paradigm where transparency served as both shield and spotlight, protecting the vulnerable while illuminating the truly innovative. The most powerful thing about transparency, I concluded, is that it doesn't require confrontation. It doesn't demand that you fight back against those who would diminish you. It simply illuminates the truth, allowing everyone to see clearly who contributes what. In that light, those who add value shine naturally, and those who don't, I paused, thinking of Everett in his cramped startup office. Those who don't must either change or fade away. The applause was thunderous. As people lined up afterward to speak with me, I noticed a familiar face waiting patiently at the edge of the crowd. Vivienne Torres. When the last attendee had gone, she approached, smiling. Impressive speech. Thank you for giving me the chance to have something worth speaking about. She shook her head. I gave you nothing but an opportunity. You built everything that followed. She handed me an envelope. The board asked me to deliver this personally. Inside was a letter confirming my promotion to Senior Vice President of Creative Strategy, a new position overseeing innovation across all departments. We're implementing your transparency framework company-wide, Vivienne explained. Every department, every team. The board believes you're the right person to lead that transformation. I thought of that holiday party, just 1 year earlier. How I'd stood frozen as Everett publicly humiliated me. How close I'd come to walking away, to becoming another talented woman who left rather than fought. How differently everything might have unfolded if I'd stayed silent. I'd be honored, I said. Later that night, as I sat in my hotel room reviewing the conference materials, my phone pinged with a notification. A business news alert. The startup Everett had joined had ceased operations after failing to secure second-round funding. I felt no joy at his failure, no vindictive pleasure. My revenge had never been about destroying him. It had been about creating a system where people like him couldn't survive unless they changed fundamentally. Some would call that mercy. I call it justice. 1 year after that humiliating holiday party, our company hosted another celebration. This time, I stood at the center, raising a glass to toast the highest performing year in company history. To transparency, I said. As 50 colleagues, many of them women who had nearly left before our transformation, raised their glasses in response. To transparency, they echoed. Somewhere across the city, Everett was likely updating his resume, preparing to charm his way into another position where he could take credit for others' work. But he would find fewer and fewer such opportunities. Our transparency framework had spread to other companies in our industry. Former team members had taken it with them to new positions. The ripples were becoming waves. In the end, my revenge wasn't firing Everett. It wasn't humiliating him publicly or destroying his career. My revenge was changing the game entirely, creating a world where the Everetts couldn't win anymore. And that was sweeter than any momentary triumph could ever be. If this story resonated with you, you've probably experienced someone taking credit for your work or ideas. Maybe you're still finding your voice, still gathering courage to stand up for yourself. Remember that transformation doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it just requires illuminating the truth in ways that can't be ignored. If you found value in Andy's journey, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of quiet revolution and justified revenge. And share your own experiences in the comments, because when we speak our truths collectively, we create spaces where the Everetts of the world can no longer thrive.